This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and with Richard Belzer dying recently last week, there's been a lot of talk of this Hulk Hogan Richard Belzer incident where Hogan basically choked him out with a front face lock, where you can actually see at one point Belzer's holding him, and like you can see that it's very painful, and you can see Hogan singe up on it, making it tighter and cutting off the breath further before dropping him where his head hit the floor, and apparently he got about 9 stitches or something. But I listened to Dave Meltzer talking about it, and I was just a baby when this happened. And Meltzer brought up that I guess that incident got huge mainstream news at the time and actually helped make WrestleMania a success. Apparently, it was all over the news. And then I watched an interview with Belzer talking about it in more recent years, and he also talked about that it was on like all the news that night. So it was a big deal, and I guess it helped the success of WrestleMania. But it's funny that this incident was far, far worse than the Dave Schultz slapping, and it happened after the Dave Schultz slapping, but it never gets as much publicity as the Dave Schultz slapping. And I even read Hulk Hogan talking about it in Hogan's book here. And Hogan doesn't say the amount that it was for. According to Meltzer, it was between 4 and 500,000, 4 and 475 to be exact. And Belzer did admit that he bought a house in France with the money and called it Hulk Hogan Arms. Although some people claim that he called it Shea Hulk Hogan, but right out of Hogan's mouth was Hulk Hogan's Arms. And Hulk even admits in it. And by the way, I watched the whole segment while I was doing cardio at the gym the other day. It's about a 20-minute segment. Mr. T comes out, and Hogan explains it in his book, and Hogan does lie a lot, so who knows, but Mr. T did collaborate it in the interview, that Mr. T said he was tired and he only did the interview because he thought there was like handicapped kids at the show that he was supposed to meet, which there wasn't. And Hulk Hogan also says that there was no handicapped kids at the show that day. But Mr. T is very combative with Belzer as soon as he comes out. And he's clearly lying, saying that he's been beating up people in Central Park all day and beating up people in the subway, where Hogan says in his book they were actually in Philadelphia earlier that day, so they weren't even in New York. But clearly that's just wrestling talk. But yeah, he's just like spewing bullshit, and Belzer says a couple of questions regarding like various things, but uses not even that big words. And then Mr. T gets all defensive. You're using big words. I'm from the streets. I talk to people talk, from the low class to the high talk that everyone can understand. So T is very grouchy and combative in this. One thing Mr. T did tell the truth on, and this actually made me respect Mr. T, is he talks about that he believes in being a positive role model, and he doesn't drink or do drugs. He doesn't just talk about it, he doesn't do it. And here we are in 2023, and I've never heard anything about Mr. T drinking or doing drugs. Hulk Hogan has admitted to doing all sorts of drugs, and his life has been in shambles the past 20 years. So I'll commend Mr. T right now on being a great positive role model and keeping that clean life despite his fame. T actually said in this interview he makes $3 or $4 million a year, but he's also contradicting himself in this. At one point in time, Belzer is saying, well, you say you're a role model, the A-Team is violent. What do you have to say about that? And Mr. T at first claims that it's not violent and no one dies in it, etc. But then minutes later, he's saying he is very violent. but he's violent because everybody's a wimp, and he's not afraid to have his mother walk the streets in New York because he's a real man, and everyone in New York is not a real man, and they're all wimps, etc., etc., etc. I mean, I don't see how him being a real man would make his mother safe walking the streets of New York in the '80s, which was a lot more dangerous than it is now. But even now, I wouldn't want to be a woman walking by myself in New York at night. But anyways, T is very combative. Then they bring Hulk Hogan on, who immediately starts insulting Richard Belzer, like immediately. So like they're both being very combative, and Hogan even says in his book that they were drained from doing all this WrestleMania publicity and they were tired. And now with all of his media experience, he would have handled it a lot differently. Rather than get combative, he would have joked along with it and so forth, rather than insult the host. I think the host actually dealt with it pretty well as a host, because me as an interviewer, if someone comes on and starts insulting me, as we saw with the Goon, there's only so much I'll put up with without snapping. But Belzer took it all in good faith, and then even let Hulk Hogan still apply a hold on him. And it's funny. I mean, he could have felt that he was knocked out and then set him down gently, but he actually just drops him, and you can hear the thud of his head hitting the floor. And then right after that, you can see Hulk Hogan's face change into panic, like, oh shit, I'm gonna get sued. Oh, are you okay, brother? And then Mr. T's like, oh, he's just sleeping, he's okay. And then you can see the look of worry on Hulk Hogan's face. And Hogan says in his book that Mr. T and he even laughed about it on the way home. And he said the settlement was good from his standpoint. But somebody says Belzer was coked up. Well, Hulk Hogan admits he was on stuff in the 80s. And Linda also talks about Hogan would have it in his fanny pack. It was like a regular thing, along with a wad of cash that you would find in Hogan's fanny pack. Roman, the link is in the description if you want to watch it, and I'll pin it to the top of the comments after. But I know that Cornette, of course, he likes to talk about stuff that he wasn't there for, and allege that Belzer was on stuff. In a roundabout way, he alleged it, and he said he was choked out faster due to that. All I know is I have been a Canadian Open winner in grappling, an Ontario champion in grappling, and when you start off and there was enough pressure that Belzer starts, there was no tap out back then. UFC wasn't popular. Belzer starts flailing his hands out, then he starts pressing against Hogan. You know that at that point the guy's panicked, so his heartbeat is beating. He knows he's getting choked out. Then you see Hogan singe up on it, and Hogan even talks about in his book that he was taught by Hiro Masuda, a legit shooter, how to choke people out. So Hogan knew what he was doing. I think he was mad and tired, and Hogan even admits he handled it the wrong way. But what I didn't know, which what Meltzer pointed out, is that actually led to the success of WrestleMania. And this guy says he agrees. Hogan looked shocked afterwards. Yeah, his demeanor totally changed to a demeanor of panic afterwards. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. It's interesting to see, like, back in those days, that kind of stuff happening. Now you got Sami Zayn on the post Elimination Chamber press conference breaking kayfabe, and Richard Belzer. It's funny because he actually jokes in this, hey, you guys want to step outside, as if like he would stand a chance against Hogan or Mr. T. Belzer is actually bigger than Sami Zayn. So now we have main eventers that talk show hosts are bigger than. Ariel Helwani is bigger than Sami Zayn as well. But yeah, very entertaining clip nonetheless. But Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, I think anyone would have been frustrated with the way that they do the interview if you watch the whole interview. And actually, in this day and age, Mr. T would have possibly even been canceled the way he was talking about people. So the interview doesn't age well, but it's highly entertaining, and it seems like everyone was satisfied with the outcome as far as Belzer's payoff, and Hogan, 400K is a drop in the bucket to Hogan with the money he was making in those days.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe